So we are up to the two dots. Zaklal kol shebehana aso b'no sein tam. So remember again. I will say. So the Mishnah quoted a statement that kol shebehana aso b'no sein tam aser. That I will say any time that ultimately again you have an infusion of forbidden flavor, and that forbidden flavor has a positive impact on the food. Ultimately, again, the mixture will be aser. Kol she'ein bahana asel b'no sein tam. But I will say any time that the infusion of flavor does not have a positive impact on the mixture, then mutter. Then ultimately, again, the mixture is mutter. So the Mishnah gave an example, I will say, of what we call no sein tam lifgam, which means an infusion of flavor that has a detrimental effect. What's the example of that? Kigon chometz shenofal al gabe grisin. Like vinegar that spills on split beans. Split beans, apparently vinegar and split beans, it's a big no-no. So we'll say, so that's an example of no sein tam lifgam. So it says the Gemara as follows. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. So Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Shmuel. Hachi hilchasa. I will say, so Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Shmuel, that this is indeed the halacha. That the halacha, Rashi says, the no sein tam lifgam mutter. That I will say, when you have a mixture of a forbidden object, forbidden substance that gets mixed into something permitted, but the taste infusion from the forbidden object, from the forbidden substance, has a detrimental impact, a negative taste impact upon the entire mixture, then the mixture is permitted. What we call no sein tam lifgam, a taste infusion that actually negatively impacts the entire food, is mutter, is going to be permitted. So Rabbi Yehuda says, name Shmuel, that this is indeed the halacha. Lo shanu elo shenaf alasoch grisin roschen. So say, by the way, now the Gemara just qualifies the Mishnah's case. Remember, the paradigmatic case in the Mishnah of no sein tam lifgam, of a negative food item when mixed into something else that has a detrimental impact, is the case of vinegar, which in this case is prohibited vinegar, which falls on or which is mixed into permitted split beans. So we'll say apparently the vinegar has a negative impact on the taste of the beans. Therefore, it's no sein tam lifgam. Therefore, the mixture is permitted. So Rabbi Yehuda says the name was Shmuel. That's what. So let's qualify this. Lo shanu ella shenaf alasoch grisin roschen. But that's only if the beans were hot. Only if the beans were hot. Aval naf alasoch grisin sonin. But we'll say if at the end of the day it fell into beans which were cold. So we'll say so again. If the beans are hot, that's when apparently the vinegar is no sein tam lifgam. If the beans are cold, then it doesn't have a negative impact. So listen to this. Aval nasan lasoch grisin sonin. But I will say if the prohibited vinegar fell into the permitted beans that were cold, v'her sichon, and that was heated up. So I'll say what's very intriguing about this case. Whoever knew that split beans could be so fascinating? But I will say, but they are. Listen, what's fascinating about this case? When the vinegar falls in, so what's the status of the mixture? What's the status of the vinegar? It's no sein tam l'shvach. That's what we call it's good. Meaning, the truth is the vinegar is beneficial. Then what happens, and therefore it should be aser, then what happens? You heat it up. Now at the time you heat it up, at that point in time, the vinegar has a detrimental impact on the beans. So what do I do in this case? So Shmuel says, if the vinegar fell into cold beans, and then was heated up, then then I will say this will be like a case where ultimately, again, a forbidden substance first benefited the food, and then only afterwards had a detrimental impact on the food, and is therefore aser. Which I will say is another way of saying what? Another way of saying that in general, and we'll see this again in the laws of kashrus as we get to chulin, is that I will say the status of a mixture is determined when? At the time that the mixture occurs. So what we do is we gauge the halachic status of the mixture at the time the two items are mixed together. So when the vinegar falls into the beans, what we do halachically is we define the nature of that mixture right then and there. So if it falls into the beans and the beans are hot at the time the vinegar fell in, then what? That's no sein tam lifgam. That's going to have a negative impact, and therefore, again, the mixture will be mutter. If it falls into cold beans, and therefore, again, has a positive impact, then ultimately, again, it will be aser, even though subsequently you go ahead and you heat up the beans, and it becomes a no sein tam lifgam. V'chein, we'll say so again. So that's the statement. That's the statement of Shul. So we'll say so we come out with two things over here. Number one, that we paskin no sein tam lifgam is aser. That I will say when the prohibited item has a negative taste impact on the mixture, the mixture will be permitted. That's halacha l'maisa. Although again, the parameters of that are much more complicated than the way we're making it over here. But at least that's the parameters of it. That's number one. And number two, that the halachic status of the mixture is determined at the time the mixture is created. Even if the mixture undergoes some type of change later on, we do not judge the status by the latter impact or by the latter effects, but what happens right now. So for example, one more time, if the vinegar falls onto the cold beans, right now that's called nosein tam l'shvach, that's beneficial, therefore the mixture is usr. Even if 2 minutes later you heat up the beans, now it's hot beans with vinegar, and everyone knows that hot beans with vinegar simply do not go. It's nosein tam l'fgam. Nevertheless, the mixture is already usr. So too again, about say when Rabbi came along, he said in the name of Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lo shanu ella, shenafa l'soch grisin roschen. Rabbi say, just backing up what we just said. When do we say that the vinegar, Rabbi say that it's no same tam lifgam, that the vinegar has a negative impact on the split beans? That's only if they fell into beans which were hot. Only if it fell into beans which are hot. Aval nafa l'soch grisin soninin v'her sichan. Rabbi say if at the end of the day it fell into cold beans and then it was subsequently heated up, na'aseh k'mishe shbiach. Rabbi say then this is like a mixture that was first again benefited, ulubasof pagam, but then only later on became detrimental and therefore aser. So we'll say since, again, same thing as we just said before, since at the time that the vinegar was introduced to the beans, it had a positive impact, so therefore again the mixture will be aser even if it is subsequently heated up, and therefore again the vinegar has a negative impact later on. Nevertheless, we judge the mixture at the time it was created. V'chein, ki aser Rav Dimi. So we'll listen to this similarly again. When Rav Dimi came along, he said as follows. He said, "V'kach hayu osin ba'arvei shabasos b'tzipori." We'll say apparently this was a dish that they used to make on Erev Shabbos in Tzipori. Apparently this was a dish that they used to make. I don't know if it means that this was like their Toah Mehel, this was what the little pre-Shabbos food, or this is what they went ahead and they made for Shabbos. But the dish they used to make on Erev Shabbos in Tzipori, Rabbosai, was this dish of split beans, cold split beans, and vinegar. The korin osa shchalayim. Rabbosai, they used to call this dish shchalayim. Look at Rashi just a moment. The kachaya osin, it's the last of the wide lines on top. Rashi says, the kachaya osin, nostin chometz l'soch grisin sonin. They would go ahead and they would put vinegar into cold beans. Vahaya mashbichan. And Rabbi say the cold vinegar would have a positive impact ultimately on the beans. For Avdimi Kamala. So also all the Gemara is just doing is, by the way, just pointing out, we've been saying that vinegar on cold beans is l'shvach, vinegar on cold beans is lifgam. Now the Gemara is just saying, by the way, this is actually done. And this was actually, I don't know if it's a delicacy, but it was certainly something which was consumed on a regular basis. It seems to have been a meichel chashuv, something important of a haraya. It was made the covered Shabbos. Good. So we'll say now we go weiter. Amar Reish Lakish. So we'll say, now we're going to come to a very important qualifying statement. Reish Lakish comes along and says as follows. No sitting down with Gam will say, and here's what's fascinating. We've now established that if you have a prohibited item, which is mixed into a permitted item, okay, we could just keep the same example over here of the vinegar and the beans. It doesn't make a difference, whatever it is. So the prohibited item gets mixed into the permitted item. So what we've said is as follows. If the prohibited item is what we call nosein tam lifgam, which means it has an overall detrimental taste impact on the mixture, so the mixture is permitted even though there is clearly a presence of the prohibited item. So we'll say now the shaila is, how do we define negative taste impact? So watch this. This is actually amazing. Amrei Shlakish. Nosein tam lifgam sha'amru. We'll say when we say that nosein tam lifgam is mutter, lo sheyomru kedera zu chasera melach yesera melach chasera tavlin yesera tavlin. So I'm going to translate the words, then we'll explain the concept. So Reish Lakish comes along and says, when we say no sein tam lifgam is mutter, that doesn't mean you should say, well, this pot of food was already deficient in salt, too much salt, deficient in spices, too much spices. Ela kol she'ein chasera klum ve'eina ne'acheles mipnei zeh. Both say what Reish Lakish is saying as us, and this is really amazing. Hold on to your seats for this one. Reish Lakish is like this: It could be that you could introduce a prohibited item into a permitted item, and you'll say, oh, negative taste impact. But why is there a negative taste impact? Because you didn't put in the other necessary ingredients into the pot. In other words, had you added more salt, had you added more pepper, had you added less salt, less pepper, whatever it is, then that would have neutralized the taste, ultimately, again, of the prohibited item. So we'll say, Rish Lakish is saying is, the only time we say, no sein tam lifgam is mutter, is only when, Rabbi say, when all of the other, we'll call it, control substances are in their right measure. When everything else that is supposed to be there is there, then halacha l'maisa we say no sein tam lifgam is mutter. But if something else is missing from the mixture, and that something else could have potentially neutralized the negative taste of the prohibited item, then what? Then we don't say no sein tam lifgam is aser, is mutter. Excuse me. We'll say, look at Rashi just a moment. Lo sheyomru. Rashi says chumrahi. We'll say this statement of Reish Lakish is a chumrah. What's the chumrah? Kilomar. Lo sheyuchlu laseis pigam. Actually, he changes it. He changes laseis. Litlos. Thank you. Lo sheyuchlu lislos pigam betavshil machmas davar acher. We'll say it has to be that you can't hinge the negative taste of the mixture on something else. Machmas davar acher. Kigon sheyach hasera melach or yisera. For example, let's say the pot had too much, the dish had too much salt, too little salt. Dim nifka machmas davar acher ein tolena pagam beisser va'aser. So we'll say, this is the chumrah of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish essentially says, we'll say that if the reason why the dish doesn't taste good is because of too much or too little of some other, we'll call it ingredient or condiment, then Rabbi say, then you can't say no sein tam lifgam is aser. I'm sorry, mutter. The only time no sein tam lifgam is mutter, Rabbi say, is when the negative taste impact is wholly and fully attributable to the prohibited food item. But if the negative taste could somehow be traced back to too much or too little of some other ingredient, then you can no longer blame that on the forbidden food substance, and as such it will not be mutter. Look at the next Rashi. Ella, ezu tam lefgam shemutter, kol she'eno chasera. Shum tikun Rashi says, ve'eno ne'achales mipnei zeh, kilomar, ve'isr zeh pogim taima, ve'eno ne'achales lav dafka, techevon depikimasa purta, karla inachas. Well, let's listen to this. So in this iteration of Reish Lakish, we're going to see, we're about to see another version in just a moment. In this version of Reish Lakish, I will say, in order to say no sein tam lifgam is mutter, every other part of the dish, of the cooked dish, has to be in perfect order. And it is clear that the only reason why the taste is off is because of the infusion of this prohibited substance. But should something else be off in the cooked dish, even though the prohibited substance might be a contributing factor to the negative taste, ultimately the dish will still be aser. When I say dish, I mean the food. I'm not talking about the kli. V'ikidar, that's the first version of Reish Lakish. Now watch this. V'ikidamri. There is another version of Reish Lakish. We'll say this is, by the way, if the first one was a chumrah of Reish Lakish, this second one is the kula version of Reish Lakish. We already like it even before we learned it. So it says the Gemara, "Ve'ikad amri am Reish Lakish, no sein tam lefgam she'amru." So when we say no sein tam lefgam is mutter, then when ultimately again the prohibited item infuses or imparts a negative taste, which when do we say that's mutter? Ein omrim kedei razu chazera melach. Yisera melech, Hasera tavlin, Yisera tavlin. But we don't say, well, this dish has too much salt, too little salt, too much spices, too little spices. Ella hashta miha hapagma. Rather, again, it says Reish Lakish. We'll say, what do we look at? We look at what the mixture is now. In other words, we don't need to reverse engineer this cooked dish and to say, well, let's back this out. And had you had more salt, this prohibited substance would have had a negative taste impact. Had you put in more pepper, we don't have to do that. So rather, what do? We look at the mixture as it is. And if the mixture as it is has a negative taste, as a result, ultimately, again, of the infusion of the prohibited food item, then what? That's called no sin tam lifgam is mutter, and the mixture is mutter. We don't start getting into, well, if you had more salt or if you had more pepper, then the prohibited item would not have had a negative taste effect. So we'll say, you begin to see a common denominator. What's the common denominator? That when it comes to the laws of mixtures, we'll say, how do we assess the halacha? Based on the mitzias that's in front of us. Based on the mitzias that's in front of us. And we don't look as to what was, what could be, or ultimately, again, what should have been. So we'll say, look at Rashi just a moment. Rashi says, Hadir Reish Lakish Lakula. So we'll say, this version of Reish Lakish is Lakula. No sin tam lefkam sha'amru ein omer. Kilomar, ein tolena pagam lebedavar acher. We'll say, we do not attribute the negative taste to something else. Lomar, chaserihi melach. We don't say, well, you know what, the real problem here, we'll say, is not the prohibited substance. The real problem here is that there's not enough salt. And if the dish had the right proportions of ingredients, so then the prohibited item would not have a negative taste impact. If there was more salt, that would have negated the negative taste of the aser item. We'll say ultimately, but rather, what do we say? Listen, here's what we know. What we know is the food tasted fine before the Isser was introduced. Now the Isser was introduced, and now what will say? And now what? The food doesn't taste good. Of course, as a number of you mentioned, will say, how do you know the food doesn't taste good? Obviously, it's not a Jew who's tasting this. You have an akum taster who's going to taste this to try to figure out if there's nesinas tam or not. And I'll say, but l'maisa, again, we assess the mixture based on what it is now. So we'll say this seems to be the ongoing theme, right? Seems to be the ongoing theme. That halacha l'maisa, we assess the mixture based on the way it is in front of me right now. So, for example, in the previous case, when it's, let's say, vinegar mixed into cold beans, even though subsequently it gets heated up, in the cold state, the vinegar is no sein tam l'shvach. In the hot state, it's no sein tam l'fgam. We don't say that since it's ultimately heated up, it's no sein tam l'fgam. Rather, what Rabbi say? We assess the halachic nature of the mixture based on what? Based on the time that the mixture occurred. So too over here. When the prohibited item is mixed into the mixture, we don't say, well, just if you added more salt, or if you added more pepper, the taste would be fine. We look at what it is right now, and if at the end of the day the prohibited item had a negative taste impact on the mixture, then halacha l'maisa, the mixture will be mutter. And I will say, that is indeed, by the way, how we paskin halacha l'maisa. So the Shulchan Aruch, this is in Hilchos Taruv. This is all Yeridea. We all of these sugis are in Yeridea. Avodah Zara is also in Yeridea. So the halacha is as follows. The halacha is afilu ein koach be'isur levado lifkom ela aidei davar acher shemasayik no shenaf es l'kedera shish v'melech o tavlin meduchan v'malei hamelech v'atavlin sheba lo haya koach be'isur lifkom afilu haki mutter. So we'll say the Shulchan Aruch actually phrases this a little bit differently. In the Shulchan Aruch's model, good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. In the Shulchan Aruch's model, we'll say he actually brings out an interesting variation of this case, which is not exactly our case, but this principle is the same. Let's say the prohibited item gets mixed into the mixture. We'll say, and what? And what? Let's say, for argument's sake, that the prohibited item by itself would not have given a negative taste. But because of the spices which already exist in the mixture, the prohibited item gives a negative taste to the mixture. So because of the salt, had there been no salt, it wouldn't have been no seitan lefgam. But now that there's salt, the salt ultimately is what creates the negative taste in the prohibited item. Shulchan Aruch paskins, it's aser. Or in other words, we don't start getting into figuring out what ingredients are causing what. Rather, we look at one simple thing. You have something prohibited mixed into something permitted, What are we looking at? What does it taste like? Does it taste good or does it taste bad? If it tastes bad, then Rabbi say what? That's called no seitan lefgam, and ultimately that is going to be mutter. If it tastes good or it tastes the same or it tastes neutral, then ultimately again that's going to be called no seitan l'shvach, and therefore it's going to be aser. I'm going to be avo. I'm going to be Rabbi say. Now obviously Rabbi say again we're looking at these halachos in a vacuum. There's much more to say about this because remember, this is also not talking about things like shishim, batal b'shishim, batal b'rov. We're not getting into, so again, this is not the primary sugya here. We'll get into all of those halachos in Meretz Hashem, but at least conceptually, I'm arming you with these incredible halachic constructs. I'm going to be avo, I'm going to be ochanan. Kol shetamo umamasho aser. So again, a little bit more hilchos kashrus here. So Rabbi Yochanan says as follows: Kol shetamo umamasho lokin alav. Anytime where there is a prohibited item mixed into a permitted item, and there's what's called tamo umamasho. But said tamo masho means there's taste, but there's not just taste. There's the actual mamashus, meaning the davar ha'aser itself is actively there. We'll see that there are other key. Well, we'll see in just a moment. So we'll say that is going to be aser v'lo. And if you consume this, technically, under certain circumstances, depending on what the prohibited item is, you may actually be chayiv malchus, v'zeu kizayis bichdei achilas pras. And I will say this is what we call a kizayis bichdei achilas pras. So I will say is we'll see, as we'll learn, there are certain things also which if you eat enough of it, halacha makes the assumption that you have consumed a kizayis of prohibited food, bisman k'dei achilas pras. I will say, so bisman k'dei achilas pras essentially means as follows, that in halacha, you don't have to eat at once, within a couple of moments, in order for it to constitute one act of eating. Even if a particular act of eating spans over a certain amount of time, as long as it is a certain defined amount of time, what we call bichdei achilas pras, right? The amount of time that literally it takes to eat half a loaf, then halacha l'maisa, that achila is mitzdarif. We'll say, these halachos become halacha l'maisa for us, very often when a person has to eat on Yom Kippur, a person is a chola, and they have to eat on Yom Kippur, so often what we try to do is we try to have them eat in a way where their smaller acts of eating are prolonged over a longer amount of time, so those achilos, those acts of consumption are not mitzdarif. They do not combine. So at least on a halachic level, interestingly enough, a person can be eating on Yom Kippur, yet halachically still considered as if they're fasting. So just an interesting idea. So the Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yochanan will say, if you have tam and mamashu, if you have taste and mamashus, literally the actual isser, in the mixture, and you eat this, it'd be a case where you get malchus, but assuming that you eat a kizayis b'chtei achilas pras. We'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, kol shetam mamashul okin alav, v'zeh kizayis b'chtei achilas pras, v'al kigon zeh ne'emar shir kizayis b'chtei achilas pras, halacha l'moshe misinai, shim yesh b'keshir pras, shal tav shel kizayis min ha'isser, lo kinas. So we'll say, in other words, without getting into technicalities over here, what the Gemara is saying is that if you have enough isser mixed into the heter, that if you consume a kizayis in the amount of time that it takes to eat the kizayis achilas pras that we are concerned that you consume the kizayis of isser, you would actually get malchus for that. You'd actually get lashes. Amud beis. We'll say, what's the next case? Tamo v'lo mamasho. We'll say, what's the next case? The next case is, we'll say, where there's just, what about a case of where there's just tam, there's just taste, but there's no mamish. But ultimately, again, the actual isser is not there. Now, we'll say, this by itself is a fascinating case. Because what exactly does this mean? That there's tam, but no mamashus, right? But there's so we'll say, if you look at Rashi defines this as tamo v'lo mamasho kigon chalav shenafal likdera. We'll say this would be a case of milk that falls into a pot of meat. O chelev shenafal nimuach shein b'mamasho be'en. Or we'll say what? Or that would be a case of chelev, let's say forbidden fat that dissolves, that is no longer there. So Rashi, so look what the Gemara says. Tamo v'lo mamasho. So we'll say if you have something that is aser, that ultimately falls into something that is aser, and what? And they will say is no longer there. So the tam is there, but the mamashus is not there. Then what? Then I will say, interesting enough, the Gemara says aser ve'in lo kin alav. So we'll say it's aser, but you don't get malchus. They will say, now, so I want to take something amazing over here. So Rashi says that's the case of milk that falls into meat. So we'll say, so what does that seem to say? According to Rashi, every single case of basar b'chalav, where milk falls into meat, I will say, is a case of tam where there's no mamashus, and therefore again, if there's just taste but no actual physical isser, so it's aser, but you don't get malchus. Which I will say is a very dramatic sheet. The Tosfos vehemently disagrees with this, and Tosfos says no. The case of tam v'lo mamish is what? Is where a forbidden item falls in, and then what Rabbi say? And then what? No. I don't mean no. Probably not. Right? Is where is that it removed. So we'll say it falls in and then it's removed. So we'll say, and that's a case where what? you have tam, you can have flavor, but the mamashus is not there. Tosus holds about say that a case of where you have milk that falls in, even though the milk is no longer discernible. The milk is there. The chalev falls in and the chalev dissolves. The chalev might not be discernible, but the chalev is there. So just, again, let's say, I'm not doing these sugyas justice because we're going to do them in chuli, but I will say this is a very exciting sugya of tam v'lo mamish, about what the impact of negative flavor is when it's clear that there is no mamash. There's mamish no real isser there. So Rashi says, tam v'lo mamish is the case of where the object, essentially the isser, dissolves into the heter. Tosa says, no, it's a case of where the isser fell in, but was then removed. So all I have is the flavor, but not the actual mamasha. So we'll say that would be a case. So again, all the Gemara is just doing over, we'll say, is drawing, once we got into tam ki'ikr, or I should say, once we got into no saying tam lifgam, once we got into ultimately, again, about the impact of flavor, we're bringing down all of these other cases as well. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, what we have over here is where there's tam and mamish, so where there's taste and where there is actual physical isser. Then Rabbi say, if you end up eating a kizayis of that b'chtei achilas pras, you get malchus. If there's tam, but there's no mamish, there's no physical isser there, then it's usher, but you don't get malchus on it. You don't get malchus on it. V'im riba, tam lifgam mutter. Rabbi say, ultimately again, if the mixture, if the infusion of the forbidden item ultimately again has a negative taste impact, then the mixture is mutter. So we'll say, look at Rashi. Vim riba tam lifgam, second line from the top of Rashi. Ha riba kula mashma, sha'afa pishin nifgam machmas davar acher, im hoyel iser zel rabos hasapagam mutter. Ultimately, again, if the forbidden item somehow has a negative taste impact, then halacha l'maisa, the mixture is permitted. So the Gemara says, we'll say, if you notice, by the way, the Gemara just switched the verbiage. Up until now, we've always been using the same phrase, which is what? No sein tam lifgam. Why does the Gemara now say ve'im riba tam lifgam? V'leima im nasan tam lifgam mutter. Why don't you just say what we've been saying it up until now? Im nasan tam lifgam mutter. Hakamash malon da'af agav de miika mili achrenaisa de pagma bahadei. We'll say, oh, what's the novelty? We'll say the chiddush is as we just said before, which is what? Even though you could say that there's something else that's also causing the negative taste. For example, I will say the forbidden item falls in, right? Falls into the permitted mixture. And what happens? Had there not been salt in the dish, then what? Forbidden item would not have been nosei tam lifgam. But now what? The salt draws out whatever it is, the negative, the harmful flavor of the negative item. So I might have been tempted to say, well, it's not the isser that's nosei tam lifgam. The isser might be contributing, but l'maisa it's the salt. So the Gemara says we don't say that. The imriba tam lifgam, if the isser ultimately results in negative taste for the mixture, whether it's because of the isser itself or it's the interaction of the isser with some other spice that's already in the dish, if at the end of the day, I will say it's very simple. If at the end of the day, what? It tastes bad. If at the end of the day it tasted good before, and now it tastes bad since the isser was introduced, whatever the reason for that is, whether it's because of the isser itself or the interaction with some pre-existing ingredients, halacha l'maisa, that's called nosei tam lifgam, and the mixture is going to be mutter. The hilchasa, I will say, what is the halacha? I know I spoiled it a little bit. The hilchasa kalishna basra de Reish Lakish. And I will say the halacha indeed follows the second version of Reish Lakish. Remember again, two versions of Reish Lakish, the Chumrah version, which was the first version, and the Kula version, the second version. The halacha follows the second Kula version of Reish Lakish. I will say, as we just saw in the Shulchan Aruch, Yardei Kuf Gimel Gimel, then halacha l'maisa again, as we know, sein tam lifgam is mutter, and even if at the end of the day one could say that it's because of other ingredients in the dish that the isser is imparting a negative flavor, and had those ingredients been removed, the isser would not impart negative flavor. We don't look at that. Rather, we assess the dish as it is. And if lamaisa, as a result now of the infusion of the negative, of the usser food item, there is a negative flavor, then ultimately, again, that is going to be nosei tam lifgam, and that is going to be mutter. Good. Amar Rav Kana. So Rav Kana says as follows. Medivrei kulam nilmad. We'll say from all of the opinions that we quoted so far, so we could learn the following. Nosei tam lifgam mutter. So we'll say, this was a pretty safe bet on Rav Kahana's part, right? So based on everything we've learned, based on everyone we've quoted, I think it's safe to say that everyone agrees nosei tam lifgam is mutter. That I will say, when you have a prohibited food item mixed into a permitted mixture, and the prohibited food item imparts a negative flavor, that the mixture is going to be mutter. So Abaye says, Bishlama mikul hu l'chaye. So Abaye says to Rav Kahana, okay, I would agree with you. Based on everyone you said, look at Rashi just a moment. When Rav Kahana said everyone, who's everyone? Rashi, first short line, Midivre Kula Nilmad, Rav Yehuda, Rav Bar Chana, Rav Dimi, Reish Lakish, Rabbi Avo. So I said these are all the opinions who were quoted in our discussions up until now. So Rav Kahana says it's nice when you come across a halachic principle that everybody seems to rally around. Based on everyone we've quoted, halacha l'maisa, again, no stand of gam is mutter. Abai says 1 second. Bishlam mikul l'chayim. I will agree with almost everyone on your list. Ela d'reish lakish amru ka'amar v'lei lo svirale. Say, listen to this. So if you look at the lashon of Reish Lakish, Rabosai, when Reish Lakish, both in the first iteration and the second iteration, so Reish Lakish says as follows: Reish Lakish, no sein tam livgam she'amru. When Reish Lakish makes a statement, he says that when the rabbis spoke about the fact that no sein tam livgam is aser, and then he again goes on to qualify the statement. Sabai comes along and says, why does Reish Lakish say ka'amru? Why does he mean? He says, meaning Reish Lakish could have just said, when we say no sein tam lifgam is mutter, so here are the parameters ultimately for this halacha. But that's not what he says. He says no sein tam lifgam sha'amru. That when the rabbis said that no sein tam lifgam is mutter, this is how they define the parameters of that principle. So we'll say, what does that sound like? It sounds like Reish Lakish amru kamar v'lei lo svirale. It sounds like maybe Reish Lakish himself is explaining the sheet of the Rabbanan, or really of everybody else, but he himself does not subscribe to this. But he himself maybe holds that no sein tam lifgam is usr. So we'll say maybe Reish Lakish himself actually holds that even when the negative food item imparts the prohibited food item imparts a negative taste, nevertheless the mixture is going to be usr. So the Gemara says, we'll say, this is like Michlal. The ikalaman the amar no sein tam lifgam usr. We'll say, because I know it's crazy, right? It's mamish crazy. Get off your kalim with stuff like this. Could it be that ultimately, again, such a shita is possible and plausible? I was like, could there be anyone who holds that no sein tam lifgam is usr? Yes, actually, it's possible. Vatanya, but 1 second, we learned. Echa no sein tam lifgam ve'echa no sein tam l'shvach usr div Rabbi Meir. Because also, listen to this Raisa. Rabbi Meir holds that whether the prohibited food item gives a tam lifgam, a negative taste, or a tam l'shvach, ultimately, again, it is going to be aser. Rabbi say that is the shita of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon says l'shvach aser or lifgam muter. Rabbi Shimon says no. The only time it's prohibited is if the prohibited food item imparts a positive taste. If it's a negative taste, that's going to muter. So we'll say, so here you have it. Rabbi Meir holds that any time that there is an infusion of a prohibited food item into a mixture, whether that prohibited food item imparts a positive taste or a negative taste, the mixture is going to be usr. So Gemara says, my time to Rabbi Meir. But Rabbi Meir, where do you get this from? We'll say, this is amazing. Gamar migiule ovdei kochavim. So we'll say, he learns it out from the halachos of kashering the utensils of Goyer. We'll say, now what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Giule ovdei kochavim, Rashi says, Dirachmana asrinu bichlei midjan. So we'll say, remember again, where do we learn out the laws of kashering kelim from? We learn it out from the war against Midyan. Klal Yisrael goes to war against Midyan. This is in the Midbar, under Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. We are successful in that war, and we come back with the spoils of war. Included in the spoils of war were pots, utensils, all different things. And that is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu to give Klal Yisrael the laws of kashering. That ultimately, again, you cannot use the utensil of a Gentile without first purging the utensil from any prohibited absorptions. So Rashi says over Yalif Migili of the Chumdrachman Asrinu. Remember again, so the Torah says that the Jew is not permitted to use the utensil of the Nachri without properly kashering it. Chsiv Kol Davar Sheyaval Ba'ish Demashma Hoil V'Nishtamish Ovi Kochavim Bikli Chamin Tzarech La'arsiach Kadesh Yiflot Gil Shabala. So what does it teach us? It teaches us two things. Number one, that when a Gentile uses a utensil, when anyone uses a utensil, the utensil absorbs. And before the Jew could go ahead and use the utensil, then what? The utensil ultimately, again, must be purged of any absorptions. So the Gemara says, Lav no sein tam lifgamu, So we'll say ultimately again, what do you see? Now we'll say, what's the status of the absorptions in a utensil? Bipashtos, Rabbi Meir assumes that those absorptions are no sein tam lifgam. They will say that ultimately, again, anything absorbed into a utensil is already going to be dormant and potentially have a negative culinary impact or a negative taste impact. And yet, what do you see? That the Torah still asers it. So Rabbi Meir says, you see from here that even no sein tam lifgam is going to be aser. Hachanami loshna. So we'll say, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you have to kasher the utensils, even though the absorptions will not be l'shvach. The absorptions will be lifgam. So too over here, we'll say, Rabbi Meir says, any time that there is a prohibited mixture or a prohibited taste infusion, even if it's lifgam, it's still going to be aser. V'idach, what's the other opinion we'll say? Asra Torah, ela kedera bas yoma delo lifgamu. We'll say the other opinion will say no. Even when it comes to the laws of kashering, we'll say the Torah only prohibits what we call what? A kedera bas yoma, which means mid'araisa. The only time you have to kasher your utensil, we'll say, is when the Oved Kochavim used it in the last 24 hours. Because then the assumption is that the absorptions are still live. We'll call it their live absorptions, and therefore they could be l'shvach. But if it's after 24 hours, then what we'll say, we assume that the absorptions are lifgam, and therefore again only have a negative taste impact. V'idach kedera bas yoma nami efshar lo pagma porta. And Rabbi Meir will say no, even if it's been used in the last 24 hours, once it's been absorbed into the utensil, then what we'll say, it's impossible that there isn't some, we'll call it diminution, in the positivity of the infusion. That didn't make sense, but you understand, right? It's impossible that ultimately, again, that the taste was not dulled in some way. So it's going to be lifgam in some way. Reb Shimon, so my time. So we'll say, so again, so we have over here is the shita ultimately of Rabbi Meir. So we'll say Rabbi Meir holds that any infusion of aser taste, so we'll say, is going to be aser. Whether it's l'shvach or whether it's lifgam, whether it's positive or whether it's negative. Where does he get this from? He gets this, we'll say, from the paradigmatic case of Gi'ulei Midyan. We'll say, ultimately, in the same way the Torah says, that which is absorbed into the pot of the nachri is going to be aser. Now, those absorptions aren't beneficial. Those absorptions are only going to be detrimental, yet the Torah still says you have to get rid of them. So from here we see that any infusion of aser taste is going to be aser, whether it's beneficial or whether it's detrimental, ultimately, again, to the mixture as a whole. So we'll say, all right, so let me do one more line. Reb Shimon, my time. We'll say, what's Reb Shimon's logic? Remember, again, Reb Shimon holds that the taste is only aser if what? If what? If it's the shvach, but not if it's lifgam. So where does he get that from? Desanya, lo sochlu kol nevela leger shabisharecha. Pasuk says, you shall not eat any nevela, rather you should give it to the Gentile who lives in your gates. Kol ha'ru'uya leger kriya nevela. We'll say only, ultimately, again, only something fit for consumption by a non-Jew is called nevela, top of Samaches, she'ein ru'uya leger, eina kuruya nevela. We'll say if it's not fit for consumption, for example, ultimately, again, it's spoiled, then it doesn't have the status of nevela. So we'll say, Rabbi Shimon will say, that only something I will say that is actively fit for consumption is called aser. If it's not actively fit for consumption, then it's not aser. So for example, again, if you have the infusion of taste from the prohibited item, if as a result of the infusion, the mixture is edible, then it's aser. But if the mixture is no sein tam lifgam, then what we'll say, it's not going to be called nevela, so to speak. It's not going to be aser, and therefore the mixture will be mutter. So stop over here for today. I'll share with them, stopping a little bit in the middle, but I'll share with you a short idea on the parasha. So also we have the great schos this Shabbos to continue in the parashos of Vayikra. And the Torah goes on in great detail with the various halachos concerning the sacrificial order. And here in this week's parasha, the Torah introduces us to something quite fascinating. So the Torah says, if you look, it's in Perek Vav, Pasuk Gimel. So the pasuk says, "V'lavash hakohen midobad u'michne sevad yilbasha b'saro v'herim es hadeshen asher tochal la'ish es ha'ola ala mizbeach v'samo itzel hamizbeach." So we'll say the Torah tells us the first order of business when the kohen comes to work in the morning. What's the first order of business? What we call chumas hadeshen. Rabbi say, remember again, over the course of the night, so karbanos are not offered at night. So what do they do at night in the Beis HaMikdash? Rabbi said they burnt all the leftover limbs and all the leftover fats. So that's therefore again the Kohen comes into work in the morning and there is a pile of ash. There's a lot of ash, what we call deshen. So the first order of business is that the garbage has to be taken out, right? So ultimately again, Shumas HaDeshen, you have to remove the ash. And the Torah discusses the idea the Kohen changes his clothing. He doesn't wear the same big day kahuna that he does the Avodah in order to take out the ashes. So let's say, so there's a beautiful and magnificent insight advanced by the Tzaddik Rav Tzvi of Riminov. Rav Tzvi Kohen of Riminov quotes his father, Rav Mendel of Riminov, who says the following. So listen to what the Tzaddik of Riminov says. Vehirimes HaDeshen. He lifts up the deshen. So the Tzaddik Rav Mendel of Riminov says, deshen is Rashi Tevos. So literally, deshen is ash. But he says it's Rashi Tevos. What is Rashi Tevos for? Davar shelo nechshav. Something unimportant. Deshen davar shelo nechshav. Tchila. So he says, tarim vitala. I'm sorry. Tarim vitala, I'm sorry. Kol davar hanira lecha katan umshulal arach. Take those things that appear to be unimportant, of a very little importance to you, visamo eitzah hamizbeach, and lift them up and put them by the altar. Tazemizeh ma'aracha shel kidusha. Ultimately, again, make of them something kadosh. So Rav Tzvi explains what was my father saying. Vehirimes hadeshen, you shall lift up the davar shelo nechshav. You shall lift up the thing that is unimportant. This samo aitzal mizbeach, and make it important. So let's listen to what the Tzaddik of Riminov was saying. But in life, we all have categories, right? And usually they're categories that we just make up in our mind. And what are the categories? Things that are important and things that are unimportant. And I will say, now we're speaking amongst chaverim. So I will say, where does that category of things that are unimportant come from? Right? Who made that category that suddenly says, this is unimportant? Right? This in my Avodah Hashem is important, this in my Avodah Hashem is unimportant. This mitzvah is important, this mitzvah is unimportant. This thing I'm makbid on, this thing I'm not a makbid on. We'll say, where did that come from? Where did that come from? What chelik and Shulchan Aruch did those categories come from? So we'll say, it's called like the add-on chelik and Shulchan Aruch. I'm the author of that one. Right? I authored that chelik. And that chelik of Shulchan Aruch, I decided, this is something I need to be careful with. This is something I don't need to be careful with. This is something I have to be makbid on. This is something I don't have to be makbid on. This is something I give my attention to, and this is something I justify. Everybody said we all have that. For some of us, that self-written chelik of Shulchan Aruch, occupies a large space on the shelf. Some people it's just a little pamphlet, but everybody has that additional personally authored chelik of Shulchan Aruch where they have self-determined what's important and what's not important. And I'm both saying, the only way to grow in life is ultimately, again, to take those things that sometimes we treat as unimportant, sometimes we trample on a little bit, and to say, you know what, I'm not perfect, but instead of justifying to myself why I don't need to do this, let me be honest, and let me say, I do need to do it. I do need to be makbid on these halachas. I do need to take this on. I do need to be more careful on this. Okay, I'm not perfect yet. As you saw in Gana Amuna, I'm still in the middle of my 6 day a week, my tshuva of Sheishis Mebreshis, not my tshuva of Shabbos. Rabbi say, one thing I have to do is I have to be intellectually and spiritually honest. And if at the end of the day there are things in my Yiddishkeit that I am not proficient in, and there are things in my Yiddishkeit that I'm not really fully observant in, let me be honest that, okay, I'm not doing it correctly, I'm not there yet, but let me not justify it away. Let me recognize again that here are my weaknesses, here are my deficiencies, here are the things in which I struggle with. And I'm making a plan. I'm going to try to be perfect. It's going to take me a very long time, and maybe I'm not going to observe it, or maybe I'm not going to keep it, or maybe I'm not going to be proficient for some significant amount of time. But the one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to justify that it's not important. I'm not going to convince myself that it's not a halacha. I'm not going to tell myself that, oh, that's archaic, outdated, or for someone else. This is not true. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be intellectually and spiritually honest with myself. I'm going to gauge where I am, and I'm going to say where I am right now, I'm doing A, B, C, and D, but I'm not doing E, F, and G. But the reason I'm not doing them is not because it's not important, not because I don't have to, but because ultimately, again, I'm just not there yet. But I recognize that one day I have to be there. Says the Tzaddik of Riminov. We'll say we all have our deshen. We all have our deshen. We all have those things in life of davar shelo nechshav, davar she'eno lechshav, davar shelo nechshav. Things that as a result of a variety of different things in life just have become unimportant to us. But I will say, you know where success in Judaic living comes? Vehirim es hadeshen, v'samo itzal hamizbeach. I will say, I have to identify the things in my Yiddishkeit that have become like ash, that have become trampled upon, that have become insignificant, or unimportant, that are like the deshen. Vehirim, I have to lift them up, v'samo itzal hamizbeach, and I have to put them on the mizbeach of my Avodah Hashem. I have to take those areas which unfortunately I have neglected for a variety of different reasons, some of them very legitimate reasons, and I have to once again make them a priority. And Rabbi was saying, this is Shabbos HaGadol, this is Chodesh Nisan, this is a time of incredible hischatshus, a time of incredible renewal. And Rabbi was saying, if we're honest with ourselves, I know I have to end, but we all have deshen. We just all have areas in life that we've neglected, areas of our own spiritual growth that we've neglected. Some of us have been neglecting these areas for years, some of us for decades, and some of us just for a couple of months, Baruch Hashem. But we all have that deshen. The first thing the Kohen does when he walks into the Beis HaMikdash in the morning is not go ahead and figure out, okay, what new projects am I taking on today? The first thing the Kohen does when he walks into the Beis HaMikdash is he identifies his deshen. He identifies the davar shelo nechshav. He identifies the area of his Yiddishkeit that he has neglected and trampled upon. And he says, you know what? I'm going to lift them up. I'm going to redeem them. And I'm going to put them on the Mizbeach. And Abosai, that is our Avodah as well. To identify our personal deshen. What are the areas that we neglected? Where are the areas where we need chizuk? Where are the areas that unfortunately we've trampled upon and have become nechshav, have become neglected in our lives? To identify them and to find the koach to lift them up, v'samo itzal hamizbeach, to once again make them a priority. And in that zechus, the same way the Kohen inaugurates a beautiful day of Avodas Hashem with the lifting up of his deshen and the placing it on mizbeach. If we identify, we'll say, our deshen, our neglected areas, our trampled upon areas, we lift them up, we put them on our altar, our mizbeach of Avodas Hashem, we will be successful, we will be spiritually energized, and we too will be zocha to that beautiful dveikus b'Hashem. Let's say a mazel tov to Shmuel and Shira Artman on the birth of a baby boy this week. Mazel tov. Mazel tov.